This episode is sponsored in part by PTZ Optics. Why need a cameraman when you can just do it yourself? Visit ptzoptics.com for more information. Hey guys, welcome to Broadcast Now, the show that talks about everything that has to do with live video, live streaming, professional broadcasting, amateur broadcasting, anything that you can do with video on the web. And we're excited to be here with you today. We've got, of course, Mr. Marty McPadden from podjam.tv. Welcome.
Hello, Steven. How are you?
I am doing well. It's been a busy day, but it's great to be here and get to talk all things broadcasting. I love the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
We also have with us from his studios, what is it, 13 feet above sea level? Is that what it is?
I am broadcasting live 13 feet towering above South Mercer Street, coming from the 16125. Thanks, Steven. Nice to see you, Marty.
Greg Terry.
We're going to have a great time tonight.
13 feet.
Yeah,
13 feet.
I love it when
above.
when he says that. That's why I had to say it, because he says it on his program, and it's hilarious when he says that. So yeah, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, my friend. We are going to be rocking and rolling tonight. Looking forward to it.
All right, so let's do our. You're going to do some welcoming here.
Of course, we're going to do some welcoming. I see over on Lindsay Badger and Brad the B-Rad is he's speaking Spanish tonight with the big hola. Pablo de la Hoya. Hello from Los Angeles on the Haps team there. And I see Brad O'Connell is a professional. He's everywhere. He's in YouTube. He's in Haps. He's a man of many places. So I'll keep an eye on it, Steven. Tonight I'm not in your studio, so I can't see all of the VMix social, but I'm checking all the other sites. We'll be talking to people throughout the evening. Awesome.
Yeah, I got it pulled up here on the VMix social. So Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. Oh man, we're all over the place. So we've got a really good show for you tonight. I know a lot of you guys have asked about this, about bringing guests on and what we do. How do you prepare a guest to come on a show, and what are some of the steps that you take? And each one of us here on the panel has our own regiment. And I know Marty's been doing a lot more with audio as of recent. So I think you're going to be able to take some different things that each one of us has done and apply it to your workflow, whether it's using, what do you call it, a one-push application like StreamYard, or if you're going extreme, kind of like what we're doing here with the vMixes and the TriCasters, Wirecast, OBS video solutions that are out there. So all these elements, or all these things, you guys can apply. I also have a great tip that we're going to do later on in the show. A lot of you guys have asked me, you've sent me emails, you've asked and said, hey, I need to buy a camera. I need to know which camera to buy. You don't want to miss this tip later on in the show, because I think that you're going to get an eye-opening experience when you watch this video of how to present that question. So we've got some cool things rolling. Also, if you check my social media, I don't know if you guys seen it. I was featured in the AV Magazine article this month over in the UK talking about video and video production. So if you didn't check it out, go read it. Let me know what you think. I had a lot of fun doing that. And I think, Greg, you're going to be in a magazine coming up here shortly as well, right?
Yeah, coming up in Church Production magazine. And I'm looking forward to that. I had a great interview with the guys, and it even opened up some new things. So we'll just start there with tip number one of the night. Any opportunity you get to spread your message, share what you're doing, take advantage of it, it'll pay off in the long run. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And continue to watch this show, because we go through that. Walter is not messing around. He's going with the C920 for the go-to camera. We're going to talk about that. And Prince Malcolm, he says, yes, I need a good camera that does it all, especially for music videos. So we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little later.
Setting the bar high here. So.
And I actually bought a new camera I'll preface that. I'll show you it later after the tip. I bought a new camera. It wasn't review. I spent the money. It was something. It was worth it, in my opinion, after a lot of research. But let's get into this. So, guys, getting your guests prepared, no matter what platform you're using, no matter if you're using StreamYard, whatever. Okay. Greg, we're going to start with you on this one. I want you to walk us through your process, because I think each one of us give our process. Everybody at home can take our process, take what they like, and make their own process. But I think it'll be interesting for everybody to hear what we go through, how we get these guests on, and what our structure is behind it.
Well, Stephen, thanks, man. I start off with a 37-page questionnaire, and they must fill in all 37 pages because I want to know who I'm dealing with. No, actually, no. For me, on my program, and Stephen, you know, we're pretty much moving in the partner range now, especially living so close to each other.
Yeah.
I know everything you do, you know everything I do. So for me, on Tuesdays and Fridays, my shows are built around news, entertainment, some politics, some biblical viewpoints. I mean, it's a whole gamut of things I do. And I have had many guests. And for me, no matter how good you can communicate, the skill sets that you have, over the past year, I have learned that having guests speak to something specific is better than anything that I can do by myself. So my personal, for how I do my shows, it's through relationship. Now, it doesn't have to be a personal relationship with me, but that's where I have started. So if I have a show going on a certain topic, I'm thinking in my mind, who do I know personally? Because I want to be able to have that interaction that can bounce back and forth. It's very comfortable. I've communicated with these folks before on a certain topic. You know, I'll let Marty jump in here and give his viewpoint. I have an example I've loaded up, Stephen. We'll roll it through in a few minutes. But for me, personal relationships and building a community, let me explain. So over the past year, my viewership has grown, people returning. And for me, I count viewership by time. Are they viewing for 30 seconds, or are they with me for the entire hour of my program? Those are real viewers. So over this time, I have built a community. Now people are messaging me, hey, PG, I'm heading down to Texas to visit my grandmother. I'm going to be right in El Paso. Maybe I could go down to the border and do a live on my phone and call into your show. You know what I say? Heck yeah, dude, let's do it. So that's where I start, is with relationships. Now, after that, I have some protocol, and I'll bounce out and throw it to Marty or you, but I'll talk about my protocol next.
Yeah, I got 3 different sections here, but I'm gonna kind of rearrange things, kind of bounce off of what Greg's saying. So you're talking about the content and the value of relationships, and that kind of lends to chemistry, right? So one of the things, I'm gonna kind of do this out of order here, because I got a technical section, and I got a rehearsal section, and this kind of goes into the rehearsal section. So Greg's talking about the relationships. It kind of dovetails into chemistry, right? So when you have a guest on, you may be doing a show, and Greg, you know, you've been doing it for a while. Stephen, you've been doing it for a while. You know, I've experienced on air. And so we're comfortable. We have our setups, and we know what to do, all the other things we practice. But you may have a guest that may be coming on for the first time, never done video other than maybe Zoom calls, nothing in a broadcast environment. So, and also they might be meeting you for the first time over the air. So it's very, very important. I've seen broadcasts, especially beginner ones, who just kind of start up the camera and get the guest in there. And I've seen people meet their guests for the very first time 2 minutes before air. And everyone's kind of apprehensive. Nobody really knows what's going on, and there's no comfort level there. So whatever you do, if you have especially have a scheduled show and you bring in a guest on, if at all possible, have a rehearsal day, maybe the day before or a few days before. Get them on in the same situation as you're going to do the interview, same location, whatever they happen to be at home or on the road, or like Greg was saying, you might be at a particular location, get on your phone, whatever it happens to be, get them in the same scenario and have a conversation with them and practice and say, this is what we're going to do. Let them know what the expectations of the interview are. Maybe go through some sample questions, kind of maybe do a mock run through, and just get that chemistry going. And that way, when you're doing the show, you don't want the show to be the first time you meet somebody. And that way, when they meet again and you have them come in for the show, there's a familiarity there. And, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, we're ready to go. And you're already at ease. Because one of the things I noticed with guests is there's a nervousness factor. If you're not used to looking in the lens of the camera and thinking about what am I going to do? How am I going to look? Is everyone looking at me? And it's almost like giving a presentation in front of a lot of people, but on video. And you're thinking more about that instead of talking to your host and having that conversation. So having that rehearsal beforehand kind of lowers the apprehension, a little familiarity, and hopefully you gain some chemistry before you actually do the interview. So that's definitely goes along with what you're saying, Greg.
Yeah, one of the things I know these guys touched on, and I agree completely, it's kind of how I went through to build shows. You got to have chemistry with your guys. If you can't have chemistry with your guys, you're going to have a failed show, because I need to know, as a producer / hosting a show, I need to know that I'm not going to run over Greg when he's talking or run over Marty, and I have ample amount of time that I can let these guys talk, and that they feel comfortable enough to not go, geez, am I talking too long? They kind of get my cadence when I'm switching, because I have a cadence, as Marty knows, and Greg's learning as I'm switching. But one of the things that I like to do to go along with what they're saying is I like to feel out my guests to find out how tech savvy they are. Is it something, because that's going to be my determining factor of how early do I need to get on a call with them. Maybe I need more than just a rehearsal. Maybe I need some time to get them to that rehearsal. Are they computer savvy? I think you should do your due diligence and feel out your guest. Have they ever done a call-in show like this where, yeah, it might be simple to you to click on a link, choose your audio and video, but to them, this might be the first time they've ever done it, and they have no clue. So going along with you, Marty and Greg, with that chemistry, I also think you need to kind of go out of your way to make your guests feel at ease, because if they come in with tension, it's going to be hard to do that interview, because or that conversation piece, because they're going to be so frazzled from trying to get on the show that they're never going to really relax and kind of ease into the show that you have at hand. And then it kind of puts you, as the producer, puts you kind of tense, because now you're going to be wondering, like, if they hit the wrong button, I just lost them. They're gone. So I'm sure we'll get to more things, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I do, Stephen, and I'm going to give you a real-time example. So there are theoretical applications we can apply and we can learn from, and Stephen, Marty, and I were throwing those out to get going. But let's talk about something practical. How does that look on stream day? I can give you my most recent example. I'm going to shoot you a video here in a minute. We're going to see how high tech Stephen is over there, if I can shoot him a video from my studio. But my program goes live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. It's a 1-hour program, and I cover all kind of things. My prep for the show this past week, I have a 10:30 meeting on Tuesday. That meeting is done at noon. Once that ends, I have my lunch, and then I start show building. So for the first 4 hours of my early afternoon, I'm doing production things, building my layers, building my program. I use vMix. I control everything with my Stream Deck and all the other stuff that Stephen has been helping me build. So now, practically speaking, from 12:30ish to 4:30, I'm building my program. But at 2 o'clock, if I have a guest, I do a test call. Now, I've already spoken with them on the phone prior to this. I've already had conversations, or I personally know them. So at 2 o'clock Eastern, 6.5 hours before go time, I call them. We go through the vMix call process, or whatever you would be using for your program. For me, it's vMix call. They pump right in, they call in, we talk, we practice, we work on camera angles, looking at the camera. We talk about making sure your earbuds are in so that you can monitor, making sure that all the sounds in your home are quiet around you or in your office, or if you're out and about, let's get in the quietest place as possible. And we practice. Then they're gone. 6 o'clock, Stephen, I call them back. I make sure everything's working. Done. And then at 8:15, 15 minutes before my program, we do the third call in. They're piped into my program and they watch seated from their place. Their interview may be coming 40 minutes into the program, but you sit and you watch. And that's just a part of what I ask you to do, to be a guest on the program so everything runs smooth. Now, I'm going to show you something that's going to blow you away. So this is going to encourage all of you guys at a tremendously high level, I promise you. Last week, yes,
Yeah, it was last week.
I had a guest on my program, 98-year-old World War II veteran, born in 1922. He knows how to use his iPhone, his earbuds, and I interviewed a 98-year-old World War II veteran, went through the exact schedule with him that I just described to you, and here's about 50 or 60 seconds of what that looked like. Let's fast forward. You then enlisted, or were heading into World War II. You were at boot camp.
Yep.
Do you remember Hitler?
Oh, yeah, I remember him well. They taught us all about Hitler, and I wanted to get a good shot at him, but I just never did meet the guy. And so consequently, I didn't get to shoot at him. I think if I'd have shot at him, I'd have hit him.
So you told me that when you were in boot camp, though, they showed y'all a picture of Hitler.
Yeah.
And said,
they showed us.
This is the target.
Yeah, this is the target. If you see him, shoot him. And everybody in my boot camp wanted to shoot him. And they also wanted to shoot the sergeant that was training us too.
Was he rough?
Oh, he was rougher than a cob. Man, he was really rough.
So folks, there you have it. Stephen, I'll throw it back to you now, but listen, that's a 98-year-old gentleman with an iPhone. All it takes is a little bit of prep. Anything's possible.
No, I mean, that's a prime example. I mean,
it was awesome, dude. He was ripping.
It was a good show. But there you go. You guys can't say, well, I'm not tech savvy. If a 98-year-old man can get on there, Marty, there's no excuse.
Oh man! So Greg, you just set the bar very, very high for everybody else. Oh, so I don't want to hear any excuses if clients are watching, or any of you guys doing shows and you're trying to work with guests and you're being a guest on a show. No excuses. You got this guy at 98. He's right. He's ready to go. He's so sharp. It's not that hard, you know. Really, you just have to you just have to want to make the effort. Yeah. You know, so I mean, I'm gonna dovetail on some of the things that Greg was doing. one of my things is, and Greg was saying, he went through his whole process, and it reminds me very much of the 90-10 rule. A lot of the things Greg was describing, people don't see. And the reason why Greg shows look the way they do is all the work you put into it. Like, you're going through the call, and you're going through, the production prep and putting your show together. That's all stuff that has to be done. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by magic.
That's right.
I think a lot of people, when they first get into streaming, and there's plenty of services that make it very, very easy just to get an interview up and stream ready to go and push one button. And that's all well and good, but you got to layer your expectations. So, if you really want to look good and really want to have all the bells and whistles, that takes work. So you have to plan that in, and you have to make the time to be able to do that. The other thing I want to mention is, part of my check is the tech check with everybody. I don't assume anything. And a lot of my work, I don't do, other than this show here, I don't do a regular show. Like, Greg is really a creator. I'm more in the producer role right now. So I do a lot of productions with clients. And so we have similar things where we're working with people that may not be familiar with being on camera or recording. So one of the things I do is I don't assume anything. I assume that they have zero knowledge. And I also try to make them comfortable. I say, I always tell them, it's like, this is not something I expect you should be expected to know. We're here. We can walk you through it, but as long as the more cooperative and the more effort they want to put in, I will put in the same effort, and you're going to get a better show. It's just that you can't go into a show thinking that I'm just going to wing it and it's going to look like, what Steven does. It's just not going to happen. You have to be able to put the effort into it. But
Go ahead. No, I was going to give you a quick example, because you guys know me. I live in this studio environment, right? COVID has really challenged me outside the studio environment to go out in a lot of these productions that we're doing, because I don't have control over that environment. I am reliant 100% on my gear and hoping and praying that, knowing that I know my gear, when I get to my location, that they know their gear that's connecting to mine. And when I mean that with audio, last night I did a graduation. Now, even though the last time I used my rig was for a play 2 weeks ago, I knew it was still working. I still tested all that gear yesterday, an hour before I left, to ensure everything was working on my end. I get to the venue, nothing worked. No cameras showed up over NDI. This is 2 hours before the graduation's supposed to start. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you find out, do you know what you're doing or do you not? Or are you just somebody else? And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I want you guys to hear this. I get there and I'm going, okay, so I'm doing NDI. So obviously the ports or the IP addresses that I chose, because I'm connected to their network to get internet, they've already have those IP addresses somewhere being used by something. So it's causing what's called a DHCP collision. Two NICs are trying to use the same IP address, and you can't do that. So it's causing a problem. So mine, naturally, because I'm the invading IP address, is not going to show up. But on the fly, they had a network administrator. I was able to say to him, what IP addresses can I use that are not being used on your network? He said, well, you can use the high 90s. So I said I could do like 96, 97, 98, 99. Meanwhile, my partner, Scott, who was there, he was kind of getting a little nervous because he's like, oh boy, what are we going to do? So I changed those IP addresses. Everything came up perfect. But again, knowing your gear, even then when you test it, you still have to have that checklist, because I went down my checklist and it was a reminder that just because I knew my gear, that doesn't necessarily mean that where you're going is going to be 100% ready to go. So that was just a little input to put it there.
It's key. And, I'm a musician and a speaker getting into this world now. I actually don't trust anything. Nothing. Let me explain. Here's a real example. So last week I was in studio with Steven. Tonight I'm at my home studio, towering 13 feet above South Mercer Street. But it's actually the Palatial Studios. Don't forget it. And I have a golden
13 feet up.
microphone.
13 feet up.
But I've been out all day. We recently lost my father-in-law. So I was at my mother-in-law's all day today, helping her with different projects and stuff you do as a good son-in-law. I rolled back in home 4:30. I know we have call-in time at 5:30. I'm calling Steven at 4:30. Steven, I don't remember how to connect my studio to your studio. I can't remember the settings I use for neural net. Steven goes, this is what you do. I came up to the studio, fired it all up, got everything kind of going, still wasn't perfect. Steven's right here in front of me on Discord, called him, boom, 3 minutes were up. But my point being, I was checking that at 5 o'clock, not 5 minutes before 6, before we went on. And we do this every week.
Yep.
Even on my programs with guests or check-ins, and Stevens, you were talking about protocol and knowing your gear. I know my system in here that Steven has helped me build. I know it. I'm learning it more and more, like master level, not there yet, but working on it, and I work hard at it. When it's 10 minutes to go before I go live, so that's 8:20 now, I go through every setting on my Stream Deck, and I'll probably have 30 to 40 different inputs that I will be drawing on during an hour program. I trust nothing until that last second. And then there's so much comfort in me, I can then create content and produce myself comfortably.
And Marty, you do a lot of that too.
Yeah, I just want I want to echo what both of you guys said. Stephen, you don't assume anything, right? So you work with the same setup all the time. You go through the same checklist. Same thing with Greg was mentioning, not trusting anything. It's all about, going through the same workflow every time. I can tell you, doing that, that's what happens. My previous life, I worked for ESPN for 20 years in production. And I can tell you, and we went through the same we have checklists, procedures, backup procedures, all this stuff. And that's kind of where I get the 90-10 rule, because a lot of the work you never saw on air. So what these guys are describing, they're doing the same thing. It's done it all the way up the level. So you go through the same exact setup, and that's the way you get to know your equipment and you get to know your workflow. So with Stephen, what you were mentioning about your IP issues on site, you know how your gear works, you know how networking works, how IPs work. You were able to describe what the issue was, the DHCP collision. You know exactly what's going on. You know how it works. We've had this discussion in the past. I realize that everyone gets excited when they're getting into this and they want to stream and they want to push that one button, get on air. Yes, I get it. That's great. And you could do that. And like, I call it the one sheet guide. You see it like when you buy a new TV, they'll have the big instruction book, but they'll always have the one sheeter to make sure that you can get set up. And that's all. And you're impatient. You want to get us up.
Yeah.
But you have to go back. And I know it's something that's not necessarily pleasurable because it's not, getting you on air, but you have to take the time to learn how your equipment works, learn the principles, learn why it works the way it does, learn the terminology, all that stuff. Practice it. Like Stephen, you go through the setup, you practice your setup every single time.
Yep.
And that does not guarantee anything. Like you went to the site and things that are out of your direct control, you see, but your part of the gear works, and that goes in the troubleshooting. So you can narrow down the problem. So when you're on site and you set everything up and you're having trouble with NDI and it's a networking issue, you know that you went through your gear and it's not on your side.
Right.
So what do? You start looking at issues outside of that. So then you went to the network administrator. So
yeah,
you didn't
fortunately
waste a lot
he was
of time.
there.
Yeah, exactly. But you knew where to look.
Right.
because you know how the workflow is and you know how things work, and you're able to get the problem set up and corrected relatively quickly
And
because you
that's
knew what you're doing. You're not just guessing.
and
You
that's
know?
something I'm glad for. Like the gentleman I had working with me last night, Scott. I've been helping him in the beginning. Like he started doing a lot of these bowling streams for the high school and different things. Like he's really taken the unction to learn his gear, learn where he's kind of unsure. He'll pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, if I do this, will this work?" Or if he's unsure of it, like he doesn't just go in and just assume that it's going to work and then
Right.
catastrophe falls. And Greg, you do the same thing. Like you'll say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm thinking. This should work, right? And I'll either say no or yeah, should work, no problem. Like there's no shame in that. Nobody's going to make fun of anybody. Like I don't know where like these guys are learning so much. I do it. I contact people that are more knowledgeable than me about different things, and I'm humble enough to say, just like the network administrator, I'm like, I have no way to find out this IP if I can't get on this network. I don't know what it's doing. And he's like, well, I can pull it up on my iPad once we get on the network, and once we figured out, boom, it pulled up. He was able to see, yep, I got you on the network. We were rocking and rolling. But it's just that, you're in that moment, and this is how the guests can feel. You're in that moment, and all panic is loose. I mean, Marty, you've seen it. We're like 2 minutes till showtime, and somebody drops off. Jeff, we've had that problem. Not to put him because he's not here, but he would agree to it. He had it where he sounded like he was looking like Max Headroom. Everybody remember Max Headroom from the 80s, right? He was doing that whole head shake thing, and his audio sounded like he was underwater 3 feet, not 13 feet, but 3 feet. And we're like, Jeff, you got to reboot. And we just did the show. He came on. We hoped he had everything ironed out. He did, and nobody was the wiser, right? It just, you just got to trust your gear and trust your knowledge, but continue to learn.
And with Jeff, he's a professional, so you
Yes.
already have a familiarity. There's chemistry there. It was unfortunately, it was something that happened, on the fly there. But getting back to the guest thing, that story right there is the reason why, and that's why I don't assume anything with guests.
That's right.
Their level, and most of the time I'm with a guest, or when I'm working with a client. Even with the client, I mean, that's why I'm there, but they're not professionals. They're content people or they're business people. But normally with guests, they may be on for the first time. I have a whole range. I don't assume anything. As soon as I get with them, I can kind of, they have a nice mic. Sometimes they have a nice mic. I can get, a sense of where they're at. And then I adjust my tech check accordingly. But can't overemphasize enough you have to do this ahead of time. You have to build in the time. You cannot wait to 2 minutes before air. Oh, by the way, I got to do a check with you, and not have that interaction and that checking beforehand, because you may get lucky.
Yeah.
But problems will crop up. So I would say, and part of my routine is, especially if it's an important interview or important client, and the level of production has to be way up. And also, if they're unsure, I go through a whole checklist of with them at least a day before, or a couple days before. Some of the things to look out for if you're doing an interview is, there's a whole list of things. Many people are on Wi-Fi. I would say one of the top things, if you can ever get people to direct connect to their router by Ethernet, and a lot of people I deal with, they have Ethernet. What's Ethernet? I'm on Wi-Fi, and they think that's great.
Yep.
And that may be great for surfing the web or getting email, but not for video broadcast or audio transmission, because you're going to have that hiccup. And I try to explain to them. And again, it's like, you got to read your guests, right? Because it depends on how they have to also be into it and be willing to put the work in themselves. You can't jump through the screen and do it all for them. They have to participate in this. So you can kind of read the situation there, but try to get them to hook up directly. You're going to have much less of a problem that way. There's plenty of things with networking that can cause bottlenecks. That's going to at least take one thing out of the equation. It doesn't mean that you might have a bottleneck even wired. That happens. But with Wi-Fi, even in the same room, with video, especially with video, you're always going to have, you see it on network TV, where these guys are on Wi-Fi. It's like, and they have these hiccups, and it's like, oh my! And I watch this stuff and see. I'm sure you both have seen it. And I'm sitting there, I go, oh, I cannot believe that they don't have this set up properly. So that's number one. Number two is you want to test their camera. You know, it doesn't have to be fancy. I don't expect a guest to have a fancy DSLR or even a camcorder, even a webcam or built-in webcam. But test it out. Get them to raise that camera up. I mean, you're gonna have to do this ahead of time. But if they're using normally on a laptop, I always say to people, do you have a few books? Get that camera up and show them getting it to eye level. Like my camera is at a little above eye level right now. But normally what you'll do is if you're on a laptop, you'll see these guys and they're looking down and the camera's looking up their nose, and it's not a very flattering angle. So show them and get it up there, get the camera, and they might not realize it. So go through that with them. If they have a microphone.
Hang on, Marty. Hang on, Marty.
Yeah.
No. You're good, but I want to demonstrate this because what you're talking about here, this is what people do all the time. Now, obviously, the frame rate's not going to be right. I'm capturing a screen. But this is not a flattering picture when you do this. Okay? When you're doing a live stream. Like,
even the framing, Steven. Look at where your head's at.
Right. So
how many times
Steven, did you groom your nostril hairs?
Exactly. And look at the light. So now when I put a lower third up, I become Wilson from Tool Time. Look. This is not what you want to do. And then if you do this, okay, this isn't good. You don't. So we always do like a little bit of headroom. Even that's a little bit too much, but it's a laptop and it's far away from me. But you do the head. I'd say that's probably good right about there. That should be your framing, like right here, like what Marty's doing. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just kind of wanted to show your point.
No, I'm glad you're on it because you give me the visual aids there of what I'm talking about. But so many times you see that, and what Steven's talking about is the rule of thirds, right? So my head's toward the top of the frame. And I see many times even if they get their camera right, for some reason people position their head right in the middle of the frame, and it just doesn't look good. And it's not natural. So you got to remind people, bring the head up to the top of the frame and position it. Like this right here is pretty good. It's like that bust shot where it's about 3/4. So that's a pretty good shot. But you got to bring your guests through this situation. I don't expect anybody to know this stuff. Show them what it looks like. Get them to do it. And then they'll be very thankful. And many times when I'm working with guests, I'll say, go through all this stuff. And the light bulb will go on. And they see it. And they see, that's why you're telling me to do this.
Can we do another demonstration?
Sure.
So with all these guys, I see P-Dubs in here, and I'll pull up his comment really quick, but I'll get to the demonstration. Here he says, at what point are you allowed to scold your guests? Michael B has been acting up. We'll kind of get to that here in a little bit. But a lot of guys, they're using StreamYard, they're using Zoom, they're using these platforms that automatically box you in, okay? But this is what they're not paying attention to. Sorry, Greg.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I see.
You know what?
I see 3 boxes, right? No, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. So I see like boxes like this, and I'm set framed right. So instead of having your guests do it, they might do something like this.
Oh, this is a show right here.
So this is not flattering for your guest, okay? You know, if you notice when I zoom people in, when I'm getting ready in the show, I will get Marty's head and Greg's head to the same or almost the same size as best as I can just by looking at it as what mine is in here, because I want everybody to look proportionate. If you watch CNN, if you watch Fox, everybody within reason, because they frame people correctly, look like this in a trifold or a quad shot or a double box. If I switch to Greg and Marty, they're very close. They're very similar. You can go by the shoulders as a good example. If you look at us right across the board, all of our shoulders touch. It's a perfect V on each one of our shoulders. These are little tips and tricks that you can use on Zoom if you're producing, if that's what you're using as your production tool, Google Hangouts, StreamYard, OBS, whatever it is. this is simple. I call it simple, but this is 101. Okay. You want to be better in video? Frame your guests up. They will thank you, because it's that moment where Greg just pulled up that mask, right? Had I not had Greg framed up right, you guys would have been like, what are they laughing at? I can literally pull up like here's my remote. I could show if I'm showing a demonstration of a product, I can go to like this and show this remote here. I can cut to Greg. Greg's able to pick up, his mask or whatever and show you
the camera we're going to be talking about.
There, you got a camera, or I can go to Marty. Marty's able to show, like, these are
the shower curtain.
the shower curtain. These are ways that you guys can set up your shots to make yourselves look so much better in production. Like Walter, I saw this earlier, but I want to bring this up. He said, great information, guys. It's very valuable. Thanks. You rock. And then he also said regards to before, where he said about, so in other words, you have to be a producer, engineer, talent, troubleshooter. And pretty much, yeah, you have to know what you're doing. You have to frame the people. You can't assume, like when Greg showed the 98-year-old man, he framed it to where he could turn, and it makes it look like he's looking at his.
That was on purpose.
It was done on purpose. When I talked about how we did the virtual set that looked like ESPN on a Legend Center show that I used to do with P-Dubs, who's in the chat, we made it look like we were in the same room looking at each other, to the point where he threw a pie in his own face. But it looked like, when I went like that, it looked like I did it to him. These are different techniques and different tricks that you can do, but you have to learn how to frame your video. I mean, that's just as important.
Think about it. Even from last week, I was live in studio with you, and we're watching, you're monitoring all this stuff, and you saw instantly, for us to look more natural, you needed to reverse our shots so that we could look at each other. You fixed it on the fly. You knew your equipment. Earlier, Marty and you both were talking about knowing your equipment. And it's very helpful, because when the pressure is on, and the best thing you can do as a content creator, streamer, broadcaster, is be punctual and on time, and honor those that are dedicating their time to come and be a part of the experience that you are creating. So you need to be punctual. So when that pressure is on and you're having a failure somewhere, you must know your equipment to rule out the 98 things it can't be. It can only be one of these two things. So very important, just bouncing off what they said. And then finally, what I want to interject, my personal opinion. With a guest, it is my job to make them comfortable. They should have zero pressure. Now, if they're pros, you're doing Sports Center, you're doing Fox News, CNN, that's a different world. But when you're trying to build a brand, build a program, it is my responsibility to make them comfortable so that they can be productive to the program. If I'm interjecting into my guest, A, I don't know what I'm doing. B, I think if you hit this button, it'll work. No. When I'm setting them up, I'm a master of what I'm doing on the vMix call. I've got it mastered. I've got them in. They're now comfortable. I saw in the chat P-Dub's question, what are some of the ways you guys look for cues from your guest that they are enjoying or disliking the experience? So I'm trying to throw some answer there for you, P-Dubs. If you are creating that atmosphere of comfort for your guest, they're going to enjoy the experience, because that's a part of your pre-planning. You're not bringing a guest on that you know absolutely nothing about or have prepped somewhat. So if you create an environment that's comfortable for them, they're going to enjoy the experience, and they're going to do great things for whatever you're streaming. So those are some of my keys I want to throw out there.
Marty, I want to ask, and I want to get Greg and myself. I want you guys to think about this for a second while I ramble for a minute. No, the number one thing that you feel is most important out of all the different tips we've given, the number one thing that you think that the folks watching absolutely need, it should be number one on their list for their guest. So that's something I want you guys to think about and put your number one, because I have a number one, and I will say it until the cows come home. Okay, I will say earbuds. I don't care if you wear the cans. I don't care if you wear. I don't care what kind of headphone. I don't care if you do a single ear. I don't care if you use AirPods. You must, if you're going to come on my show or any show that I do, and you don't have earbuds, I'm going to make you walk and get some. I'm sorry, but that's because the audio, if you're using a laptop, and I understand not everybody has production equipment, but everybody has headphones. Not everybody has a microphone, but everybody has headphones. And so when you're using a built-in mic, and I'll explain this for a second, a built-in mic on a laptop, or even if your desktop happens to have one or whatever, your webcam might have one. The problem is, as the audio comes out of your speakers, your built-in microphone then picks up that audio and it pushes it back through along with what you're saying, making this endless cycle of echo. Well, guys like us who are all wearing earpieces, guess what we're hearing in our head the whole show is that noise. Right now, if all three of us were just quiet, you would hear dead silence. There's no hum, there's no hiss. That stuff you can work around. But my opinion, the first thing when I send out an email for somebody to come on the show that's never been on the show, I make sure they have headphones. That's a must, and they have to be here a half an hour before. Must, across the board. If you can't do that, then you can't be on the show, because it's distracting to the viewers, it's distracting to the panel to have that echo going on. If you're, I can tolerate a built-in microphone depending on the guest, but that, guys, Marty, is a must for me.
Yeah. I'm gonna. You stole when you raised that question. I was thinking things, because that's one thing I didn't cover so far, and this is a huge pet peeve of mine as a producer, and I blame Zoom, and not that Zoom's not a great service, it is. But I'll say maybe more accurately, I blame video conference systems.
Yep.
Because I've seen people get on, and the thing that video conference systems have is something called echo cancellation. Because a lot of people just want to hop on with their laptop, no earbuds, built-in mic, have a meeting, which is totally fine. And these systems have echo cancellation, meaning that you can't have two audio paths going at the same time, because what you'll end up having is echo, because people are, and it goes through the speaker. So what these systems do is they cancel out the audio. And this is why if you're on one of these systems, if two people are trying to talk at the same time, you hear audio ducking, meaning that the more dominant voice will come over, and then the less dominant voice will get ducked down, or audio ducked down. The level goes down to be able to have both go through. And it just sounds awful. And I run into this. I manage multiple podcast clients, and some of them I actually manage the interview recordings. And I use a system where I don't have to use echo cancellation, but you have to have earbuds or earphones to do it. And it makes it so much better in the final product, because what ends up happening is and even systems that have echo cancellation, just get used to wearing an earpiece, because what it'll do is the echo cancellation has to work a lot less and not as hard, so you don't get as much ducking. It just sounds way better. But on these systems that you don't have to use echo cancellation in professional environments, then you can actually have some crosstalk, and you can actually have natural conversation. And in my case, if I'm doing something that's pre-recorded, I'm recording on separate tracks. So when I go into post-production, I have clean audio tracks of each participant. I'm able to control it in post. I have no audio ducking. I'm able to introduce some crosstalk when it's warranted, but I have full control over it, and it sounds great. And there's no ducking. So just get used to that. And I run into people that, I don't need an earphone. I use Zoom, or because they're used to that. And Zoom and video meetings are completely different than doing an actual production. So if you really want to be professional, get used to doing that. And it doesn't have to be fancy. I'm just wearing like a $6 earpiece, very inexpensive, that you can use on a two-way radio. And I have it in the back, and it's a coil cord. Earbuds are fine. If you have an iPhone or any other smartphone that comes with earbuds, put those on. Put them behind your back. A lot of people don't want to wear the big cans because especially if you're doing audio or video. I get it.
Yeah.
But like what you're using, Stephen, using in-ear monitors. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Put them behind your ears, and you're ready to go. But it makes it should be mandatory. I'm with you, Stephen. To me, it's mandatory. That,
yeah.
and I agree with you also, showing up 30 minutes ahead, because get that, and I demand that too, get that connection going.
Yep.
Once I know that you're connected, if you need to walk away and do something, go ahead. We're going to, especially if it's a live show, come back, a couple minutes before, and you're ready. But at least I know that your signal and you're hooked up, ready to go.
Greg, you did that earlier where you got connected, and then you wanted to go get some things, get something to drink. You walked away. We finished doing some other things, and you were ready to go, but you were already connected. Number one, before we get to the tip here, number one pet peeve or thing is a must for joining your show.
The number one thing for me is nobody wears earbuds. I want to create as much echo and disdain and torture as absolutely possible. I want a chaotic event. I want to sit in the corner of the screen with goofy sunglasses on, look like an idiot, and have 44 million people follow me on TikTok.
Oh my God.
That sounds about right.
Listen. If you do not have good audio, turn your cameras off, turn your stream off, and go watch the Andy Griffith Show. You can I could put a picture up right now of Steven and have his audio and still have a great production. I could not have a great production with great video and terrible audio. So, we stole each other's thunder. I try to have a little bit of fun with it, but it's audio. Audio is king. There you have it, Stephen.
Well, no, and listen, guys.
Stephen, to bounce off of what Marty was saying, and you and I discussed this the other day. Okay, so I have an earpiece in right now. You can't see it. Okay?
Right.
So Marty showed us his with the coiled cable.
Yep.
Mine, I'm a musician, so I've got nice, Shure earbuds, all right? All the drivers, et cetera, et cetera. But what you guys don't see is on the back of my neck right now is a 4-inch piece of duct tape keeping my ear piece in perfect location. So not only are they important, but getting them in where they're comfortable, make sure the levels are right so you don't damage your ears, because you can. I've been playing music a long time, and my hearing's not the best, and I'm only 48 years old. So be careful of your audio. Get the right stuff. Get some decent earbuds. Tape them in place. Clip them in place. And it's the answer. You must have audio.
Now, a lot of you guys are sitting here watching this show, and you're like, okay, you guys have been doing this. You got a lot of expensive gear. This is not practical for me. If you're just tuning in now, all this is practical to you, because not one of the things that we recommended costs more than $10 if you're talking about headsets. Yeah, you can go advanced and get the Shores like Greg and I have that do cost, a lot of money. But some of these things are just framing your camera, framing your guest's camera.
This is like $10.
Right.
I have a binder clip.
Right. He's using a
With
binder
my
clip
duct
to
tape.
hold it on his. I have a clip as well to hold it back. Listen, these things are all available. Just the tips that we're giving you here, getting yourself framed in a shot correctly, just doing things like that for your guest is going to change how it looks, how your video and how you present yourself. Your audio. Audio is king. If your audio, people will forgive bad video, but they will not forgive bad audio. They'll tune out. It's like nails on a chalkboard. So let's get to this tip here because we want to dialogue this just a little bit after this. But you guys don't care if we run over a little bit in the chat room, right?
Go right ahead.
So a lot of you guys have asked, what type of camera should I buy? I want to buy a camera. I need to buy a camera, but I don't know what to get, and I have a limited budget, or I don't have a limited budget. You know, it doesn't matter. Check this out. All right, guys, this is your quick tip for this week in Broadcast Now. And as you guys can see, I've got a bunch of cameras sitting here, and I've got my old Nexus here to represent a cell phone camera. But what I wanted to talk to you a little bit really quick about is choosing the best camera. I get this question all the time. What camera should I use for my live stream, or what camera should I buy? What's the best one out in the market? Well, right now you guys can see I have 5 cameras here that are just a few some of the cameras that I have. I have a Nikon D5600 right here. This has just got an extra battery pack on the bottom. I shoot video and I also take pictures with this. I've got a PTZ Optics 20X Zoom NDI HX camera. I have this Canon XA40, has audio inputs, professional camera, XLR's inputs on it, really high-end 4K camera. And then I also have this PTZ Optics ePTZ camera that I use a lot. It's got dual SDI and it's also NDI. So, which one's the best out of all these? The question should not be which one's the best. The question should be which one's the best for your use case. I use each and every one of these cameras for their own individual purpose. These cameras here I use a lot because they can be controlled. I use them for the live stream. I use them on location for on location live streams. It's perfect when I'm using multiple cameras set up. If I'm doing just a run and gun type of shoot, where I'm trying to just get B-roll footage, I might grab this guy right here and just get some really nice close-up shots of a product and have the background blurred. I could also use this camera for that. I can add professional audio to both my DSLR and the Canon XA40. Let's say I just want what I call a dump shot or a cutaway shot. I might want this because it's dual SDI, so that means I get a close-up and a long shot with this via NDI or via SDI. So I can put this on a motorized slider, have it go slow, looking at a product or looking at, you know, whatever subject. Or I could be shooting a video like I'm doing right now and just using my cell phone at 1080p. So all these have their own place, and you need to figure out what is best within your budget for the video you're trying to film. Now, 4K, obviously, a lot of YouTube videos now are 4K. You might want to go with a professional grade camera. But we're talking about cell phones, which range anywhere from free all the way up to $1,000, depending on what your budget is. Same with DSLRs. They can start $500-600 for a decent one, go all the way up to, you know, thousands of dollars. This PTZ Optics, $1,500 to $2,000 if it's the NDI version. The PTZ, $500-600, and then you've also got the XA40, the Canon, which is about $1,500. And so my use case for this is I plug in my wireless mics. It's got a hot shoe mount. I can add a light to it. I have all the functionality that I can use on location for a trade show, or if I want a single camera live stream to my live view, it's a perfect camera for that, or if I want to use it for in studio. So there's a lot of great options for that. Where a DSLR, you're not really going to use that for live stream unless there's firmware that you can hack. I know some people can do it. Some cameras, the newer ones, can do it. If you're spending thousands of dollars, they'll run longer. But most of them run 20 minutes to half an hour before it shuts off for video. Let's say you're videoing a soccer game. It's going to need a lot more than that. So really, to answer that question, you need to ask yourself, before you ask somebody what the best camera to get is, describe your application and let them pick. If you were coming to me and asking what's the best camera to get, I'd ask what your application is. A little bit long-winded today, but I hope that answers some of those questions. That was your tip of the week. So I hope that kind of enlightened you guys on what type of camera you should get, or at least think about to pose the question. We saw some comments in your questions about wireless microphone recommendations. P-Dubs put in here that can connect to a Canon camera, that could pin to a belt or lapel. These are things we're going to kind of get into in the next couple weeks. So if you're not subscribed, if you're not tuned in, we encourage you to tune in. We're also going to get next week, we're going to get into some of the cameras. We're going to kind of why you would want a certain type of camera, because I can't tell you which camera to buy. That's ultimately what I was trying to get. Everybody has a different application, right? Everybody has a different way of doing things, and these guys are going to allude to that. But we're going to get into some of that. We're going to get into some of the audio. We need to spend a whole show on each of these because there's so much information into it. But just be prepared. If you want to get into the wireless microphone aspect, my in-studio, like my ears, I call them my ears, my wireless headset that I have right now, you're talking $2,500 for the receiver, the transmitter. That's not counting the $500 earbuds that I have. I mean, I've had these for years. But my point is, you start getting into wireless systems, Greg will tell you, being a musician, they ain't cheap. So if you want if you find a wireless system for, I would say $200, you just light that $200 on fire, because that's
no. What
that's
you do
essentially
is
what
you
you're
go
doing.
down to the gas station, and listen, it's not meant to be disrespectful at all. But
No.
if you are going to put money into a wireless system, and I know it's a different program, that's one you can't go chintzy on.
That's right.
Absolutely not. If you got a $200 wireless, you go, oh, I got the best thing since sliced bread. It's like when I used to go and train music departments at churches, and I would walk in to do a whole weekend seminar, and I would say, okay, well, let's look at the equipment you have. And they go, oh, we've got good stuff. We've got a great mixer. We've got some power amps. We've got some speakers. Okay, well, what do you got? You got a Mackie? You've got Midas? You've got JBL? No, we got the Onyx system from Radio Shack. Well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go down to the gas station. You're going to get maybe a 1/4 ounce. Gas is pretty expensive now. A 1/2 ounce. You go come back and you go put it on your Radio Shack stuff, and you're going to light a match, and we're going to start from square one. So, Stephen, I know you were going there, and I don't want to be disrespectful. Money is important. Budgets are important.
Well,
but on wireless systems, never. You cannot cut corners.
And I didn't mean it to be disrespectful, and I didn't want it to come across like, oh, like a gear snob. I don't want to see people waste money. Because I've been there. I bought a cheap I bought a cheap mixer when I first started. My mixer cost me $60. Guess what? The audio quality that came out of it was $60 worth. And I'm just being honest. It's not something that I want to see people buying 50 mixers till they get to the mixer that they should have bought from day one if they just saved their money. And here's a prime example. I shouldn't say I broke it. My tripod failed on me. My Canon HF G40. I paid $1,200 for that camera. I had it for about 1.5 years. I was setting up to do a video for the pinball, and the part of the tripod that you tighten to pivot up and down failed. So the weight of the camera tipped over, and I was too far away. And not only did it tip over, the whole head fell off, and I have it in the other room, because those that have done remote productions with me know I tell them, be careful, that I need to get a new tripod. Scott told me that last night. Fell off. The screen on the side was open, and it landed on that screen, shattered the touch screen. Fast forward, Canon says $650 to replace it. And I'm like, well, for that price, I'm just going to buy a brand new camera, sell it for parts on eBay or something, get $400 or $500 for it. So I went out and I bought the Canon XA40, which is HDMI 4K professional camcorder that I'm going to be using for video for my YouTube videos. It's got XLR inputs, all the controls for the camera, but I'm also going to use this for on-location production. Saving up money, being able to do high-end video with it, has touchscreen, has infrared, all the I would rather spend the money and wait, like this happened back in December, save the money and buy something that I know is going to be top notch, than to go buy something for $200-300 that I can't hook up a microphone to it. I can't, record uncompressed. I can't have any of these options to hook up to a live video transmitter like LiveView. I would just rather save my money, because otherwise I'm just at my stage of the game, I'm just throwing money away at that point. So I want that to be kind of an encouragement to you guys. It's not just all about, hey, he's just picking on. I save my money too for high-end gear. I have to, because that's the kind of quality that I want to put out for my viewers and my business, my job. So
don't put a $1,200 camera on a $20 tripod.
Yes, lesson learned on that. Well, actually,
seriously,
it was actually an $80 tripod, believe it or not. But it's still chintzy.
Mm-hmm. You take your time, you grow step by step, and the space will make the space will make room for you. And what I mean by that is, if this is really what you enjoy doing, you're passionate about it, and you begin to develop a following and folks are watching your stream, or you have something new and fresh and all of a sudden it's blowing up on you, the equipment really will come. The gear will come. You're better off to do it step by step and develop with good equipment. And if I can give you guys a secret right now, my audio engineer, we're going to get him on the program one night, maybe when we do an audio portion.
Ooh, get Chris on.
The dude's a stinking genius on audio.
Yep.
Okay. But Chris and I have been pounding, even now, on Stephen Haywood to get rid of that PreSonus mixer that is in his basement.
Now, wait a second.
And let's get him.
That's not a cheap mixer, though.
It's not a cheap mixer.
The 2500
technology
was a
has
2500.
passed it by.
It has. So let's just stress
That's my point.
Yeah.
So, no, my point being, you're always evolving. And, if you set a long-term goal to do something at a high level, prioritize. What do I need first? I've got $300 to invest in my studio. What can I get that'll be high quality for that money that's going to last me for a long time? So it's vitally important to build smart.
And Jeff Rainwater has a question about what things should I look for in a camera specifically to do close-up shots and board games and sharp focus. Jeff, we're going to get into that next week. I'm going to have a list. I'm going to have a whole host of cameras here. And I know Marty's got some cameras. Greg's got some cameras. We're going to go through the different cameras that we have. And we're going to show you what we use those cameras for. We're going to do the whole episode on cameras. We're not going to get into that today. Today was on the guest, but we showed a tip of the week was trying to figure out what camera you should buy. And we're going to give you our opinion and what we use our cameras for in the studio, because you got to remember something. And I said this in that video if you missed it. A camera is like a tool. You want to have multiple cameras in your toolbox, because each camera you're going to use for a different project. There's no one size fits all. There's no one-stop shop. Each camera is good for a certain thing or certain device or certain use case. So, Marty, I know you wanted to tag on to that.
Yeah, I mean, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, each camera type and each camera is good at a certain thing. They tend to excel at different things. So it's really identifying your use case and getting the equipment to fit the use case. If you just buy equipment, it's like, I'll use the Photoshop example. I think people think they can buy Photoshop and all of a sudden they're this graphic genius. And that's not the case, because they have no idea why they're buying it. First of all, they don't know their use case and they don't know how to use the tool, and they're not a designer and all that. They don't have all the skills going into it to use the tool properly. So the first thing, like you're saying, Stephen, identify the use case that you have, because there's, especially if you have a very, specific use case, there's probably a camera that's best suited for that. Like each camera, the DSLRs are good at certain things.
Yep.
A camcorder that you just got is good at certain things. A webcam is good at certain things.
That's right.
A phone is good at certain things. So it depends, and we can go through all this. There's different use cases that each one of those devices will excel at, and maybe not so good in other use cases.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
would say,
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. You would say.
I would say identify a use case first, and then you'll know what to get, to address that use case.
And we're going to end on this. You'll be surprised, as Jeff asked about what the better, what way to go for like a close-up shot. I think you might be surprised. You might be able to find a camera for, a DSLR for $300 to $500 to do that. And we're going to talk about that next week. You don't need to go out and spend $1,500 for a camcorder to do tight shots. So we want to get into that. Bring your questions next week as we get into the show. And in a couple weeks, we're going to do a community show where we can get you guys in on Zoom so you can ask those questions. But sign up, subscribe, continually come back here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. I know we went a little bit over, but we wanted to get those last thoughts out. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Greg Terry, youtube.com/Greg Terry Experience. You can watch him every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for the PG and Barney Show. Anything else I'm missing? What do we got? Anything specifically on Friday?
We're good, Stephen. Thank you as always, Marty. I enjoyed it. And probably the last thing I would interject, and for sure I'll pound it in there next week on the goodbyes, but always be building relationships. It is the key to any industry you want to be in. Always be building relationships and learning from folks that know a little bit more than you. And so I'm thankful for people like Stephen that I've grown in relationship with. So thank you, Stephen.
No worries. And Mr. Marty McPadden from podjam.tv. Always a blast to have you on here as well.
Thank you very much, sir. Just trying to stay out of trouble.
And we may or may not have Jeff Fitzgerald joining us, getting the quad team back, the band back together. So the four of us.
The quad box.
Yeah, I know Jeff has been wanting to join up with us. I know he's in Colorado right now doing some video on location, so that's really exciting for him. So we'll definitely see him. So make sure you guys subscribe. I know I do a lot of different things, diverse things. Friday night, we do the Retro Gaming Show, the Retro Buzz, so tune in for that at 6 p.m. Eastern. An hour, myself, Glenn, and Doug, as we discuss the latest and greatest in video game, I guess we say video game news. But tomorrow's a special day. Tomorrow is the community show. So if you guys want to jump on, we have Travis MCP on tomorrow. So you guys get to ask Travis some questions. It should be a lot of fun. We've had him on the show before. He's a really good guy. So bring your questions. We'll have the Zoom link out tomorrow, and you guys will be able to join. Guys, until next time, we'll see you next week for more of Broadcast Now. Keep it buzzing.